I trusted my Godfather, and he betrayed me in the worst way possible. Stalking, embezzlement, and false prosecution destroyed my career, my relationships, and my life. From gas station snacks to Christmas dinner chaos, this is the story of how I survived manipulation, panic attacks, and betrayal, and finally reclaimed my life. I never imagined I'd end up handcuffed in my own living room at 9:42 p.m, staring at the flashing red lights of a police cruiser while my Godfather, Daniel, smirked as if he'd won a twisted game. That moment didn't happen out of nowhere. It had been a slow, suffocating build-up, like a storm you know was coming but can't outrun. It all started 2 months ago, on that coast vacation trip my cousin Oliver and I had planned to Clearwater Beach. What should have been a carefree escape turned into the first thread of a nightmare I couldn't cut myself free from. I remember walking into that tiny gas station on the way down the highway after 12 hours at the office, my stomach knotted from deadlines and the stress of my $450 car payment looming over me like a guillotine. I grabbed a pack of sour gummy worms and a can of energy drink, the artificial sweetness sticking to my teeth as I tried to shake off the anxiety. Daniel had insisted on driving. He'd always loved road trips. That was classic Daniel, charm mixed with control, a dangerous cocktail I'd been blind to for years. We'd grown up close. He was my Godfather, yes, but more than that, he was the family's golden boy, the man everyone deferred to. I looked up to him, trusted him. Oliver teased me once about it, saying, "You treat him like he's untouchable, Justin, that's weird." At the time, I laughed it off. But by the third day of the trip, I noticed subtle things. He would disappear with my phone for minutes at a time, and I'd catch glimpses of my pink iPhone case on his desk back home in pictures he'd taken. He laughed when I mentioned it. "You're imagining things, man." That casual dismissal was my first real red flag. After the vacation, I tried to put it behind me, but little cracks in the foundation of our trust began to widen. I started noticing that packages were missing, bills misfiled, and strange withdrawals on my bank account. Then came the whispers, neighbours, co-workers, even my hairdresser, Maureen, who refused to see me anymore. "I'm sorry, Justin," she said with a tight smile, "I just can't, people are talking." My reputation, the one I had painstakingly built since graduating college, was being shredded. And somehow, Daniel was always at the centre of the storm, casually observing the chaos he orchestrated. Then the legal terror began. One Thursday night, after work hours at 7:15 p.m, I got a call from a detective I didn't know. "Mr. Justin Hopper," he said, "you're being investigated for fraud and embezzlement involving your late parents' estate." I chirked on my dinner, the greasy taste of leftover gas station nachos clinging to my throat. There must be some mistake," I stammered. But Daniel's fingerprints were everywhere. He had misled authorities, and the evidence, falsified and precise, looked damning. I remember sitting in my living room, slicing through my shirt from the gym earlier that evening, the stench of my sweaty clothes mixing with panic. Every creak of the floorboards made me jump. Every shadow felt like Daniel's looming presence. I couldn't sleep. Nights were filled with nightmares, my hands cuffed, my friends whispering, my house empty except for his smug face. Panic attacks would strike in the middle of meetings at work, my chest tightening so severely that I thought I might pass out. My therapist, Dr. Lynn, told me, "Justin, your nervous system is stuck in fight or flight. This isn't weakness, it's survival." I needed years of therapy to unpack it, to understand how someone I trusted could weaponize every strength I had into vulnerability. Even family gatherings turned into minefields. Oliver tried to warn me, but Daniel's influence had already spread. Our family lawyer was sharing confidential information with him under the guise of advice. Friends stopped returning calls. People looked at me differently in the grocery store, whispers following me down the aisles. I felt my life fracturing in slow motion. That pink iPhone case, once a trivial object, became a symbol of my vulnerability, a constant reminder of Daniel's betrayal. And yet, the worst part was the normalcy he maintained. While I spiraled, he'd show up at my parents' old estate, sipping coffee like nothing had changed. The juxtaposition his calm, my chaos was maddening. Every time I saw him in public, I would feel my chest tighten, my hands tremble, the memory of that first vacation gas station snack, the moment I realised trust can be deadly, rushing back in vivid detail. By the end of that first month, I knew one thing: this wasn't just a personal attack. It was systemic. Daniel had weaponized authority, money, and trust, and I was trapped in a nightmare that I couldn't wake up from. My life, as I had known it, was over. The weeks after that call were a haze of anxiety and mistrust. Every time my phone buzzed, my heart jumped into my throat. I started checking Daniel's social media obsessively, trying to find any slip that would give me leverage. But he was meticulous. Perfect post, perfect smile, perfect goddamn control. It was infuriating. I kept replaying that Clearwater trip, trying to remember if there were any signs I'd ignored. The thing is, there were plenty. I just didn't want to see them. After I got promoted at work on March 14th, I thought maybe I could compartmentalize, bury the paranoia under deadlines and spreadsheets. But promotion meant more visibility and more scrutiny. My co-workers whispered in the break room, giving me those sideways looks. "Justin, you okay?" One asked, voice tight. I nodded, forcing a smile, but inside I was unraveling. Each compliment felt like a trap. Daniel had managed to cast shadows over every corner of my life. Then came the first direct stalking incident. One Thursday night, after work hours, I parked my car at 8:05 p.m. near the downtown gym, the same gym where I'd left a pile of sweaty clothes in my locker. I walked to grab a protein bar from the vending machine, and saw a familiar black SUV idling across the street. My chest tightened. There was Daniel, just sitting there, staring. No blinking. Just watching. I froze. This can't be real, I whispered to myself, gripping my pink iPhone case like it was a lifeline. I didn't sleep for 2 nights. Panic attacks struck in the grocery store, at the office, even while showering. My cousin Oliver became my only lifeline. Justin, he's crossing every line, he said one night, the hum of the refrigerator filling the tense silence. You can't just let this slide. We started documenting everything, timestamps, receipts, photographs. Every little detail mattered. Daniel had learned to manipulate the system to his favour. Even the family lawyer, someone I thought I could trust, was feeding him information about my legal strategy. I remember discovering an email chain with confidential details. My stomach dropped. Betrayal, I realised, didn't just live in one person, it had spread like a virus through my own family network. One night, I was sitting in my apartment clutching a bag of gas station Cheetos, the artificial cheese just coating my fingers, staring at my bank account online. A withdrawal of $2,300 had occurred overnight. My first thought, Daniel. My second thought, what else had he touched? My sleep became fragmented. I woke sweating, dreaming that my car payment receipts had turned into legal summons, that my apartment was empty except for his face grinning at me. Dr. Lynn, my therapist, started having to schedule late-night calls. Justin, it's the trauma speaking, not reality, she said calmly. But even as she spoke, my body trembled uncontrollably. Trust, for me, had become toxic. Then there were small moments that left me rattled, someone rifling through my trash, missing packages, the smell of gym clothes I'd forgotten in the car that seemed to have been moved. Once at 10:17 a.m., I caught a glimpse of Daniel leaving my building. I followed him, trembling, every muscle screaming. I wanted to confront him, to scream, to punch, but Oliver stopped me. Wait, we need evidence, not revenge yet. It was maddening being trapped in a nightmare while forced to plan meticulously. The social consequences deepened. Neighbours whispered as I walked by. Co-workers avoided eye contact. Maureen, my hairdresser, refused to see me even when I offered cash. I'm sorry, Justin, people are talking, she repeated. Friends stopped returning texts. Invitations evaporated. It wasn't just paranoia, it was reality. Daniel had built a cage around me using public perception, legal manipulation, and family loyalty, and I didn't even have the key. The first real flash of hope came during one of Oliver's late-night research sessions. Justin, look at this, he said, showing me a form thread from a small legal board. He's done this before. Other families, other estates. You're not the first, and you're definitely not alone. Relief collided with rage. Daniel had played the same cruel game for years, and the people around him had turned a blind eye. It was more than betrayal, it was systemic. By the end of this period, I was no longer the naive cousin, the obedient godson. I was a man on edge, counting every step, analysing every interaction, watching every shadow. Panic attacks had become part of daily life. Trust had become a currency I couldn't spend. But the fire was building, a quiet, simmering rage, because I knew one thing, Daniel had underestimated me. And soon, I would see just how far I could push back. The day I found out the full extent of Daniel's betrayal is burnt into my memory. It was April 22nd, 3:16 p.m, the kind of great, rainy day that makes everything feel heavier. I had finally convinced myself to go through the boxes of my late parents' estate, hoping to find some clarity or at least closure. Instead, I found receipts, wire transfers, and documents showing he had embezzled over $1.07 million. My hand shook so badly that I dropped the paper, and the smell of my sweaty gym clothes from that morning's workout mixed with the mustiness of the old estate files. I sank to the floor, realising that Daniel hadn't just manipulated authorities to prosecute me falsely, he had stolen from me, from the memory of my parents, from everything I thought was untouchable. I called Oliver immediately, my voice cracking. It's worse than I thought. He's taken everything Mom and Dad's estate, the trust million. He paused, his tone grim. Justin, I told you he's done this before, but I didn't think it would hit so close to home. I felt my chest tighten, nausea surging. For weeks, I had felt like a cornered animal. Now I understood why. Daniel wasn't just targeting me, he had a pattern. A predatory system, polished and rehearsed. The betrayals didn't stop there. Our family lawyer, someone we all had trusted, had been feeding Daniel updates on my every move. Every attorney-client privilege I believed in had been violated. I remember confronting her at 5:02 p.m, voice shaking, my pink iPhone case clutched in my hand. Why? How could you? She shrugged, indifferent. Justin, it's business. You don't understand. That moment shattered my last threads of faith in the people I should have been able to rely on. Then came the worst part, the corrupt police officer. I had filed a report after noticing someone had been inside my apartment while I was at work. Instead of investigating, Officer McKay brushed me off, accepting a series of unexplained donations from Daniel and refusing to take my evidence seriously. Each time I tried to escalate, he deflected, citing procedural technicalities. It was maddening. The system I thought would protect me had been hideout, manipulated to isolate me further. My panic attacks intensified, nightmares returned with a vengeance. I dreamt of Daniel standing in my kitchen, pouring through my bills while I screamed silently. Socially, I was collapsing. I stopped going to work for a week, terrified that whispers would follow me through the office. People I thought were friends avoided me. Even my own cousin Oliver looked worn down, guilt shadowing his face as he tried to keep me from completely unravelling. My hairdresser, Maureen, refused to see me when I finally summoned the courage to make an appointment, muttering, "I can't. People are talking. I'm sorry." Public shame had become my living, breathing entity I couldn't escape, and it felt like Daniel had trained everyone to avoid me, isolate me, and watch me fail. Psychologically, I was a mess. Dr. Lynn's sessions became my lifeline. "Your nervous system has been hijacked by trauma," she said during a Zoom session on April 29. "This isn't just anxiety, Justin. This is betrayal trauma. Your brain is trying to survive someone you trusted, weaponizing your life against you." I sat on my couch, sweaty and trembling, the taste of leftover gas station snacks still clinging to my mouth, and realized she was right. Every success, every achievement, had been turned into a weakness I couldn't escape. I had lost my career, my friends, my home. The more I doubt, the more I uncovered. Daniel had done this to others' extended family, even a former business partner. I wasn't alone in suffering, but that revelation cut like a knife. All those nights feeling like the world had singled me out, it wasn't personal, it was methodical. My sense of safety, my ability to trust, had been rewired against me. Even Oliver admitted, we underestimated how deep this goes. He's a predator in plain sight. By the end of that week, I realized my life had fractured across every dimension, legally, socially, emotionally. Every corner I turned, Daniel's influence loomed, even where he wasn't physically present. I couldn't sleep, eat, or function normally without the creeping paranoia that he was watching, manipulating, planning his next move. Every mundane task, buying snacks, making a $450 car payment, picking up my laundry felt like navigating a minefield. And in the midst of this, the emotional weight of the betrayal compounded. It wasn't just money, it wasn't just lies, it was the complete collapse of the family trust I thought I could rely on. I knew I had a choice, remain a victim, or start clawing back my life. But first I had to confront the monster face to face. That confrontation would come, but the road there would be explosive, irreversible, and change everything. It was December 25th, 6:37 p.m, and our family had gathered at my parents' old estate for Christmas dinner. The smell of roasted turkey mixed with the faint tan of leftover gin clothes I hadn't yet packed for donation. Daniel was there, grinning like he owned the place as usual, his smugness amplifying the tension in the room. I could feel, in my chest, the years of manipulation, the stolen estate, the ruined reputation, all converging into a single point. My hand shook as I sat down in the tray of stuffing, gripping my pink eye fern case in my pocket like a talisman. Oliver caught my eye from across the table. He was pale, whispering, "Justin, are you sure you want to do this now?" I nodded, barely able to speak. Every fibre of me screamed both fear and righteous fury. I had documented everything: bank transfers, emails, witnesses. Tonight was the night I took back control. Dinner started normally, the usual chatter, Aunt Louise fussing over mashed potatoes, Uncle Frank complaining about politics. Daniel was boasting about his latest business deal, laughing in that way that made everyone feel small. I felt bile rise in my throat. And then I stood up, voice trembling, but loud enough to cut through the room. "Everyone, I need to say something," I said. Silence fell like a thick blanket. Daniel's eyes narrowed. "Daniel, you've stolen from this family. You've embezzled Mom and Dad's estate. You've manipulated the authorities to prosecute me falsely, and you're not the only one. We have evidence of your schemes." Daniel chuckled, dismissive. "Justin, really, are you trying to ruin Christmas too?" "No, Daniel, I'm taking it back," I said, pulling my phone out. I dialed 911 at 6:52 p.m, my fingers trembling so much the touchscreen nearly slipped. "This is Justin Hopper. My Godfather is committing financial crimes, stalking me, and I have all the evidence," I said, my voice cracking. Chaos erupted immediately. Daniel lunged toward me, but I stepped back, adrenaline flooding my veins. Chaos screamed, chairs scraped across the hardwood floor, and Oliver grabbed Daniel's arm to restrain him. "Stop it, now," he shouted. Within minutes, uniformed officers, thankfully not the same corrupt ones, stormed the estate. Daniel was handcuffed in the living room while relatives shouted accusations and begged for explanations. My stomach churned, part relief, part lingering panic. He's done this before," I whispered to Oliver, tears streaming down my face. "I'm not crazy. I'm not imagining it." The fallout was immediate. The family lawyer was confronted by police for sharing confidential information, and Daniel's patterns of fraud were exposed. Guests who had once whispered behind my back now stared, some with guilt, others with shock. My reputation finally began a slow, painful path to restoration, but the psychological scars didn't vanish. Even as Daniel was escorted away, I felt my chest tighten, my body ready to explode with lingering panic. That Christmas dinner ended with chaos, but also a strange relief. The stolen estate, the threats, the manipulation, they were now on record. I had confronted the source of my terror, and the law had acknowledged it. I remember sitting in the wreckage of my parents' dining room, surrounded by relatives crying, shouting, and apologizing, and thinking, I survived this. But the emotional consequences lingered. The smell of burned turkey, the sound of glass shattering, the taste of stale gas station snacks still clinging to my mouth, it all replayed in my mind for weeks. Nights were filled with nightmares, flashbacks of Daniel's smug smile and his casual destruction of my life. Panic attacks became part of the healing process rather than the precursor to despair. Dr. Lynn guided me through visualization exercises, grounding techniques, and daily journaling to separate past trauma from present reality. Even in victory, I realized the betrayal had spread wider than I imagined. Other family members had been manipulated, coerced, and deceived. Daniel's methodical cruelty had been systematic, not personal, an understanding that gave me both sorrow and power. I could no longer trust blindly, but I could act decisively, armed with evidence, courage, and support. By the end of that night, I felt a strange shift. The terror that had dominated my life for months had been challenged, confronted in the most explosive way possible. I had called the police. I had exposed the schemes. And while recovery would take years, I had reclaimed the piece of myself that Daniel had tried so hard to destroy. The next steps, legal battles, therapy, rebuilding social ties would be arduous, but at least now I had direction. I walked into the living room, exhausted, shaking, but alive. For the first time in months, I felt the faintest spark of hope flicker through the shadow Daniel had cast over my life. After Christmas, the adrenaline faded, leaving me with a hollow ache I didn't know how to fill. Daniel was in custody, the evidence I gathered was solid, and yet I felt smaller than ever, crushed under months of betrayal and public shame. My therapist, Dr. Lynn, told me it was normal to feel both relief and devastation simultaneously. Justin, she said during a 7:45 p.m. session 1 week after the confrontation, your nervous system has been in overdrive. What you're feeling now is the aftermath, grief, anger, and residual trauma. I nodded, gripping my pink iPhone case like a lifeline, but inside, the panic refused to loosen its grip. I barely left my apartment. Every sound outside the thrum of a car engine, the slam of a neighbour's door made me jump. Even the smell of my own sweaty gym clothes that had been left in the laundry basket from weeks prior triggered nausea. Sleep was fragmented. Nightmares came in vivid waves, Daniel grinning over shredded documents, whispers of relatives accusing me of their imagined crimes, flashing lights of police cruisers outside my window. I woke screaming, trembling, every muscle taut, convinced he was still watching. Friends didn't call. Colleagues avoided eye contact. Maureen, my hairdresser, had officially refused to see me, leaving me with a crooked haircut I couldn't fix myself. The whispers in public spaces were constant. I could feel them following me in the grocery store, at the gas station, even at the bank when paying my $450 car payment. I felt exposed, naked, as if the entire world was complicit in Daniel's schemes. Isolation wrapped around me like a thick, suffocating blanket. Legally, things dragged on slowly. Court dates were scheduled months apart, and each one forced me to relive the nightmare Daniel's smug smile, the stolen estate, the manipulations. I remember sitting in the courtroom on February 11, 9:03 a.m., heart racing, my hands shaking so badly I could barely hold my notes. I glanced at Oliver in the gallery, his hand gripping mine tightly, and tried to ground myself. The social fallout made it worse. People I thought were friends whispered. Relatives gave me awkward stares. Co-workers hesitated before speaking. My life had become a minefield of suspicion and judgment. The emotional toll was staggering. Panic attacks came 3 to 4 times a week, sometimes triggered by the faintest cues, a shadow in the parking lot, the sound of a door closing, the smell of leftover food. I began intensive therapy, 3 sessions a week, combining cognitive behavioral therapy with exposure exercises to rebuild trust and counter the trauma's rewiring of my brain. Dr. Len explained, trauma doesn't just live in memory, it lives in your body. We have to retrain both. I nodded numbly, tears streaming, still haunted by the memories. Financially, I was drained too. Daniel had embezzled millions from my parents' estate, and I had to rebuild from scratch. Every bill, every $450 car payment, every grocery run felt like climbing a mountain. It was humiliating, but necessary. I had to learn to survive independently, to reclaim agency in a life that had been methodically stripped from me. By March, even the legal victories felt hollow. Daniel remained in custody, but the emotional scars were mine alone to carry. I still had nightmares, and I still struggled to trust anyone, even Oliver, my closest ally. Every small sound triggered hypervigilance. Every casual smile felt like a potential mask. Even the act of eating gas station snacks, which had once been mundane comfort, now came with a trace of anxiety. Socially, the damage lingered. Family events were tense and awkward. Conversations felt loaded, and whispers followed me wherever I went. I lost friends, and even strangers' assumptions about me cut deep, fueled by the whispers Daniel had cultivated for years. My hairdresser refusing to serve me was symbolic of the broader fallout. People had been manipulated to fear association with me. The sense of betrayal wasn't abstract anymore, it was woven into every interaction, every glance, every ordinary task. Emotionally, I hit rock bottom around mid-April. I was exhausted, angry, and grieving a life I could no longer recognize. I cried in my apartment for hours, sometimes screaming into my pillow, sometimes just shaking silently. The combination of legal terror, social isolation, and familial betrayal had rewired my thinking. Trust, safety, and self-worth were now fragile, easily shattered. But even at my lowest, there was a faint ember of determination. Oliver reminded me, you survived this, you're still here. That's more than he ever thought possible. Those words became a mantra. I began to understand that rock bottom wasn't the end, it was a foundation. If I could rebuild from here, I could reclaim not just my finances, but my sense of self, my relationships, and my life. Recovery didn't happen overnight. It started in small, almost imperceptible steps. I began attending daily therapy sessions with Dr. Lane, exploring the trauma Daniel had inflicted and the ways it had rewired my thinking. Together, we worked on grounding exercises, journaling, and cognitive behavioral techniques to counter panic attacks. I learned to separate the past from the present, to reclaim moments of peace even when my body wanted to react with fear. Financial independence was the next challenge. With the embezzled estate largely gone, I had to rebuild from scratch. I took a second job temporarily, managing late-night shifts at a local convenience store. I remember standing behind the counter at 11:47 p.m., the fluorescent lights humming overhead, watching Oliver eat gas station snacks and laugh despite the day's exhaustion. Each $450 car payment, each late-night deposit, felt like a tiny victory, proof that I could reclaim agency over my life. Slowly, I paid off debts, re-established my credit, and learned how to manage finances on my own terms. Therapy and personal discipline were essential, but so was rebuilding trust. I started reconnecting with friends cautiously, explaining what had happened and how Daniel's manipulation had affected me. Some relationships healed, others didn't. My hairdresser, Maureen, eventually agreed to meet after I apologized for avoiding her and explained the harassment I'd endured. "Justin, I'm glad you're okay," she said, clipping my hair carefully. That moment, simple, mundane, felt like a triumph of humanity over betrayal. I also took steps to ensure Daniel's network of corruption couldn't touch me again. I filed civil suits against the family lawyer who had leaked confidential information, provided evidence to law enforcement about the bribed officer, and cooperated fully in investigations of Daniel's previous victims. Each victory reinforced that I wasn't helpless, that the fear that had dominated my life could be replaced with empowerment. After 2 years of relentless work therapy, financial rebuilding, and social reintegration, I reached a turning point. On September 18th, at 10:22 a.m., I signed the papers for my dream house. The address, 432 Willow Creek Lane, a place I had toured months earlier and imagined as a sanctuary. The moment I held the keys in my hand, a wave of relief and pride washed over me. I could finally create a home that wasn't shadowed by Daniel, by betrayal, or by fear. I decorated slowly, intentionally. I hung photos of my parents on the walls, placed a small figurine of my cousin Oliver on the mantel, and even set a corner for my pink iPhone case, not as a symbol of trauma, but as a reminder of resilience. I installed security cameras in a personal safe, symbols of lessons learned. Every time I walked past the safe, I remembered the months of paranoia, the nights of panic attacks, the social isolation, and I also remembered that I had survived. My nightmares became less frequent. Panic attacks decreased in intensity and frequency. Dr. Lynn celebrated my progress, noting that while the emotional scars would remain, they no longer dictated my life. I felt capable, strong, and in control. I had transformed Daniel's weaponization of my life into a roadmap for self-empowerment. I also embraced a broader mission, helping others who had suffered at the hands of manipulative relatives. I started volunteering with a legal advocacy group, sharing my story and mentoring people navigating betrayal, trauma, and financial exploitation. Each time someone thanked me for guidance, for listening, I felt the weight of past hard lift slightly, replaced with purpose. Financially, socially, and emotionally, I had rebuilt. I wasn't naive anymore, but I wasn't broken either. I had reclaimed my reputation, my independence, and my sense of safety. I could walk down the street without flinching, talk to friends without fear, and even laugh again without guilt. Every element of my life, the therapy sessions, the gas station snacks that had been my small comforts, the carefully counted $450 car payments, the pink iPhone case, had been woven into a story of resilience. Looking back now, sitting in my new home with sunlight streaming through the windows at 9:15 a.m., I realized that Daniel tried to take everything from me. He succeeded in hurting me, in isolating me, in causing years of trauma, but he didn't break me. I took the fragments of my life, painstakingly rebuilt them, and created something stronger, safer, and undeniably my own. I survived the nightmare. I reclaimed my life. And finally, I'm free.